Monster Hunter Wilds is now fully released, and I've completed my first run through all the content. I've been asked what my thoughts are on particular monsters of the game, so I thought I'd share my thoughts on every monster early on, and to see how they change over time. And I'll even put footage onto the background of all my first hunts with these monsters on stream, so enjoy watching me try to beat them all up. We'll go in order from the beginning of the campaign to the end, starting with Chedicabra. Chedicabra was a monster that, even when it was first spoiled, I wasn't super pumped about. It's interesting that it can attach different parts of the terrain to its arms and such, but you almost never get to witness this because of how much hunters get to brutalize it. But every monster hunter needs a punching bag, and overall, Chedicabra is great at that job. I do like Chedicabra as the beginning monster for the lore, too. It shows how strong us hunters can be compared to the people of the Forbidden Lands who are just avoiding monsters instead of hunting them. Chedicabra's design is also pretty great, and I think you'll hear me say this a lot through the video. Wilds has some really awesome monster designs. I'm a big fan of monsters that are more monster and less stylized to be other things. Chedicabra's based around a frog, and he feels like he's based around a frog. I like that. He's not a samurai or a vampire, he's just a frog monster, and it's done very well. Chedicabra's a great introduction to hunting, and the gear you can get from him is also really good, so I spent some time hunting them. Maybe we'll get an event quest in the future where we fight a whole pond of these guys. Chemitrice, a proper chicken monster. I'm pumped. I did a lot of chicken hunting in the world for my 100-hour weapon challenges, but Chemitrice fits the build so much better. The design of this monster is really great. It has so many flowy bits, which I really like a lot. Plus, you can cut the tail off this monster, and that's always a good thing. Unfortunately, the hunt isn't too big of a deal. I think it's actually easier than Chedicabra, honestly. Maybe this is just meant to be an introduction to elemental damage or blights. I don't know exactly, but it felt like this chicken had 2 attacks, and once you knew how to dodge those 2, it died. The cutscene introduction for Chemitrice was so funny, though, and I just want to watch that one over and over again. The palicos in that cutscene cracked me up. I also think the weapons for Chemitrice are very worth it for dual blades and bow or any fun elemental builds in general. They pack a good fire punch. It's too bad that Chemitrice didn't pose much of a threat, but we're still early in low rank, so it's understandable. I would love to see more new monsters in Wilds have more impact on the hunter, and Chemitrice felt like it didn't really do anything but stand there and get hit. Lalaburina. I remember seeing the reveal of Lalaburina in trailers and thought that this was the apex monster of the Scarlet Forest. I've been hyped about it for months. I'm a big fan of Rachna Kadaki back in Monster Hunter Rise, and another spider monster was peak excitement for me. The layer where you hunt Lalaburina is perfect too. It's just a really great monster. I think the hunt would be even better if the monster hit you harder. It's kind of weak, but the way it attacks and dances around the battlefield while you gotta dodge the florets or get paralyzed is pretty great. The design of Lalaburina is also really good. The spider goes from unassuming white spider to deadly rich red flower spider while it's getting ready to pounce on you. The paralyzed status effect also adds tension to the hunt. You gotta stay moving or you get punished by a hidden stinger, and that's really cool. Not to mention the gear crafted from Lalaburina is gorgeous. You look like you're out for a fancy occasion, and that's pretty fun to have in a game about hunting monsters. Overall, it's a great monster. I really like how incredibly spidery it is. It fits really well, and I only hope that down the road we'll get some souped up version of Lalaburina that, for those who get hit by the paralyzed status, it just punishes really hard. Kangalala. Where do I even begin with this monster? I'm not a big fan of Kangalala, design or hunt. I don't think he fits in world. He is an outlier for sure. Kangalala was a monster for a past era of Monster Hunter, where the game was way more humorous. And I'm not saying Monster Hunter Wilds is devoid of humor, but it's a different kind of humor. Fart jokes, poop flinging, and butt cheeks are just a little out of the humor realm for me. I definitely wasn't expecting a cutscene where I'd get a face full of butt for a split second. That's really out of character for modern Monster Hunter in my book. And it's hard to say all of this when the gear from Kangalala was the one I was looking to use because it had Mushroomancer on it. And honestly, the gear set is good in general with the other skills on it as well. Plus, the gear looks great. The hunt was decent, getting bodied by a fat monkey is funny, but there's just too much poo flinging for the game as a whole. I think the only redeeming note I'll give to Kangalala is that it fit the Wudwuds really well. Having the Wudwuds crave Kangalala's pink hair for their own hats and stuff is exactly what I'd expect from those characters. Balahara. Oh man, I love Balahara. This was my most anticipated monster when we first started getting spoilers for the monster of the game. The Cthulhu-looking worm and the pack of them in the cutscenes causing cave-ins in the sand was really cool. This was also the monster that started upping the campaign difficulty for me. Not by much, but it did get more hits on me than any other monster up to this point in the campaign. And the Water Blight actually really mattered while I was running through the campaign with the dual blades. I'd love to see this monster have some more pack tactics as well, like we saw in the cutscenes. It'd be a really cool mechanic to have you fumble into quicksand placed by other Balahara while you're out hunting, or have a few jump out of the sand at you. Hunting just one of these alone is nowhere near as exhilarating as they look in the cutscenes. I do like the hunt a lot though. Balahara is mobile and it gets all over the place. The water blight will actually make this hunt tough since he's all over. You can cut this guy's tail off too, which is always a bonus in my book. And this is your first proper long monster, so certain weapons are really liking the piercing potential against this guy. Consider certain shots from the bow, heavy piercing ammo, or even Charge Blade's SAD is pretty fun to land in Balahara. I'm also a big fan of all the coloring on Balahara. Black and brown, it's not a bold, bright color, but it works really well as a sand dweller. Then it opens its mouth and has a bunch of big glowy bits. Now we're talking. Balahara is a great monster, and I'm looking forward to some pack tactic hunts with it. Doshiguma. Doshiguma is a really great design monster. He's definitely more bear to me than anything else. And I don't know if you've seen grizzly bears in person or not, but Doshiguma looks just like a grizzly bear to me. I also really love the wounding mechanic on Doshiguma. It works super well. When Doshiguma gets enraged, all of his wounds reappear and he goes into like a fit of rage. And it's really cool high risk reward gameplay there because you can get in there and pop wounds for big damage, which always benefits you. But if you don't, Doshiguma just beats you up. He just pummels you. And that's kind of the fun part about his enraged state in the game. Doshiguma also attacks really weird. I don't know if you guys have noticed it or not, but they're awkwardly slow and they're hard to counter, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good pacing for the hunt to have this big, slow monster hit you. But it definitely threw me for a loop when I was trying to get into the hunt there, and I thought that I was dodging attacks when really I was dodging way too early, and then I get smacked. Now, one downside of Doshiguma is that the gear is pretty rough. I'm not a big fan of it at all. I actually don't think I'll ever use any Doshiguma gear, even the layered armor, for anything. I think it looks really bad. Overall, though, Doshiguma is a great monster, and I love the hunt with it. It could prove to be a challenge for many hunters, but most of the hunters, I think early on anyways, didn't find this too challenging because they hunted a million times during the open betas. If Doshiguma wasn't in the open beta, I think this hunt would have been more of like an Apex feeling monster like Anjanath was in World than what we gave it credit for. Uthduna. Hey, it's the first Apex monster. We made it. I actually liked the Uthduna hunt a lot. I think it was really cool. The shield mechanic with the fins of Uthduna is a really great mechanic. It's a nice touch. You can either brute force your way through the shields and then get to the juicy bits of Uthduna to hit it for damage, or you could go for the soft, juicy bits in the chink of its armor if you're feeling like you have good aim. This thing actually attacks so much too. I don't know if you guys realize that or not. It did for me. If you let this thing go, it just attacks all the time. It's always hitting you. And low rank, it wasn't too bad, but in high rank, I'm actually finding myself getting slapped by this guy often. And it's mostly because I'm greedy. I'll be honest with you there. I just like to attack a lot, and this thing punishes me big time. I really like the big whale dive that Uthduna does when it flies up in the air and flops on the ground. I think that's hilarious. It gives me a chuckle every time. And the armor set of Uthduna is gorgeous. It actually really reminds me of the Zora in the Breath of the Wild games. It's very colorful and it reminds me of that a lot. Overall, I'm satisfied with Uthduna as an Apex monster. I don't think it was more challenging than any of the other Apexes, even beyond Wilds, but I like the big catfish design and the hunt's pretty okay. Rampapolo. I'm pretty sure Rampapolo exists just so Crow Meta can have a helmet that matches his brand. Rampapolo is such a goofy looking monster. And I live in Minnesota here in the United States, and Minnesota's official state bird is the mosquito. And Rampapolo reminds me too much of those things. It's just a nasty little bug. The hunt with Rampapolo is pretty good though. The gas and the oil for explosions is a really great touch. And it's also really funny to deflate this guy. Considering how comical Wilds is going for with Kangalala, I'm surprised that Rampapolo doesn't sound like a whoopee cushion when you deflate him. It's pretty silly. Gear-wise, I'm not a big fan of the look. I know a lot of people do though. The Plague Doctor thing just isn't for me. I don't really resonate with it. But I'm glad it does exist in the game for those who do like it. And I'm most pumped for the wide range on the Rampapolo armor because you can now play a support role early on in the game because you have wide range and Mushroom Master available to you so early on. That's pretty awesome when you have a hunting party to play with. For some reason, I thought Rampapolo was going to be bigger than it is. I don't know what it is about the trailers, but it led me to believe that Rampapolo was some big giant bug. And, you know, I guess in comparison to other bugs, he's pretty big, but he's kind of a tiny monster. So overall, Rumpopolo's fine. He's nothing crazy for me, but he's there. Ray Dow. Now this, by definition for me at least, is a monster in Monster Hunter. A big flying wyvern that shoots lightning out of its face. It's everything you ever wanted. It fits the environment that it's in perfectly with all the big thunderstorms. The hunt is a blast, and it poses a legitimate threat to hunters who aren't watching for the big railgun attack. And I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but the monster's sound design is incredible. It sounds like glass, and I think that's really cool because Ray Dow is literally turning the sand in its region into glass as it shoots lightning at it. I think that's really awesome. You can also cut the tail off Ray Dow, which is pretty cool. But I think the biggest problem Ray Dow had was that we were able to hunt it in the betas. This is another monster that probably would have been really, really difficult, but because we had the beta available to us, so many people hunted Ray Dow so many times that it posed almost no threat in the story. And that's just a note to self. Don't play in betas anymore. I think I've learned my lesson with the Wilds release that even though the betas were fun at the time, it definitely diminished the game on release for me with a monster like Ray Dow. Ray Dow is so cool, but because I already had it figured out from the betas, it was no longer as cool. I want to get back to this though. The size of Ray Dow is awesome, and I hope that we get more big monsters in Wilds. There's a lot of little monsters and just a handful of proper big monsters, and the big monsters, in my opinion, is what makes Monster Hunter fun. So I really like the size of Ray Dow. Overall, Ray Dow's a great monster, a really fun hunt, and there's pretty much no downside for me on this one. Nerscylla. I'm going to tell you right up front, Nerscylla is my absolute favorite monster in Wilds. I've never played games older than Monster Hunter World, so this was my first time hunting Nerscylla, and it was perfection. Like I said before, I like the spider monsters, and I felt like Nerscylla did the spider thing the best. Swinging from webs, catching you in the webs, putting you to sleep with its stinger, and chomping on you when you're immobilized. It's just so good. I feel like Samwise Gamgee taking on Shelob in Lord of the Rings. It's so much fun. And it gets so much better, because when you chase Nerscylla to its lair, it can now jump in and out of the web flooring that it has, and it has a bunch of hatchlings that come out of nowhere and join the hunt with you. And every single time I hunt Nerscylla, I'm just having a ball. It's so much fun. The gear for Nerscylla is a little bit out there for me. It's a little too futuristic, and it doesn't remind me of Nerscylla at all, actually. Like, I don't think there's anything about the armor that's Nerscylla-like. It's a cool aesthetic. It's very futuristic, like I said, so there's a place for it for those who want that feel, but it's not what I was expecting from Nerscylla gear at all. Nerscylla overall is a really good monster, though. Really good design. It feels like a big spider hunt, and that's how it ought to feel when you're hunting a big spider. I like it a lot. Hirabami. Oh my gosh, ew. A big flying centipede. I wasn't expecting this, but it kind of worked. The hunt with Hirabami is a little strange, though. It feels like another monster that just doesn't really do anything. It just flies around. There's one big attack I know of that's very telegraphed, and other than that, it just floats there. You just beat it up while it's in the sky. The armor for Hirabami reminds me of Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. It's very flowy and has a lot of long hair tied to it, so there's a lot of fashion hunter stuff you could do with the armor set. I don't know. I don't really like to be a downer, but I feel like Hirabami might be the most forgettable monster in Wilds. It doesn't serve much purpose in the story. It's just a big bug that flies around, and that's pretty much it. Big bummer. Ajarakan. And then there's the opposite of Hirabami. This monster is a monster I despise, but that doesn't mean it's a bad monster. Monkeys, they absolutely terrify me. And monkeys that are on fire and explode things terrify me even more. Ajarakan was the first monster to cause some problems for me in the story. And primarily it's because you hunt two of them at the beginning, and no amount of dung pods will split them apart. When you're 1v1 versus Ajarakan, it's a lot easier to manage, but it's still a hard-hitting monster. One interesting note here is that I think the armor set is kind of weird looking. I don't know what the hype is around Ajarakan armor, so someone can fill me in the comments on why you like it so much, but it's not for me. I don't like it. It's just my opinion. I'm not a big fan of it, but you know, it's there. I also don't think I want to hunt any more of these than I have to. Ajarakan's not a bad hunt. I think it's actually a really well-designed hunt. I just have some monkey PTSD from past monkeys in World. For the average monster in Monster Hunter that isn't an Apex or an Elder Dragon, I think Ajarakan is appropriately made and poses a good challenge in the game. I do think that if all the monsters in Wilds were this difficulty or higher, the game would have been more well done as a challenge through the campaign. Ajarakan really ups the difficulty in a really good way, and I kind of hope that they had done that with all the monsters through the campaign, and not just with this really terrifying monkey. New Udra. You know what I love doing more than cutting off a tail from a monster? Cutting off 6 tails from a monster. Huge props to Monster Hunter and making a monster that has a ton of severable parts, because it is so fun to latch onto the arms of New Udra and chop at them until they pop off. I love it. I think I've done 3 hunts with New Udra now at this point, and in all of the hunts, I got 5 arms cut off, and I can't get that 6th one. I'm working on it. It's very, very fun. New Udra is a fantastic hunt overall. Lots of really great mechanics with the fire spraying and trying to figure out which arm is going to hit you. I really like not knowing where the attack is coming from. Even though we know where the attack is coming from, when there's 6 arms flinging all over the place, you got to look in all the directions, and that's a really cool thing I'm going to have to figure out. It's a great learning curve, and while you're trying to learn that learning curve, you're getting smacked really hard. Also, if you haven't taken a listen to how this octopus sounds, be sure to sometime. It sounds really cool, and it's kind of alien-like, which fits an octopus very well, I think. The armor set for New Udra is really cool looking. I think it's a really well-designed armor set, but the rubbery look or the rubbery feel, I don't know what it is. It's like nails on a chalkboard for me. It just feels gross, even though I'm not literally touching the armor. Every time I see those little rubbery bits like wagging around, I just get disgusted. I don't know why, but I think the armor looks really cool. I think that New Udra is the best Apex design out of the 4 in Wilds. It's a challenging monster. It fits the region it's in perfectly. It has really great hunt mechanics, and it's a memorable hunt. You won't forget this one. More monsters like New Udra would be fantastic. Guardian Doshiguma. Let's start with Guardians in general on this guy, so I don't have to repeat myself, because there's a few Guardians in the game. I think Guardian hunts are really cool. I think Guardians of the story are a little weird, kind of interesting, but mostly goofy. Artificially made monsters is kind of a stretch, but I guess we'll see how that pans out later. But Guardian monsters with the explosions that they add to their attacks that you can also mitigate by destroying the Wilk that sprouts up throughout the hunt, I think is a really cool mechanic. I like that a lot. Overall, every Guardian hunt is really, really sweet, specifically because of the lighting in the game. Monster Hunter Wilds has a kind of dark setting, especially in the area where the Guardian monsters are at, and that lighting adds to the really cool effects of the explosions in the game. When you get a big explosive attack and it lights up the whole room, it makes everything just look so dynamic. It's awesome. Guardian Doshiguma specifically isn't too big of a deal compared to its non-Guardian counterpart. I felt like the hunt added basically nothing new besides the explosions, and even then it didn't matter that much. I liked base Doshiguma more, but I was definitely surprised to see the Guardians in the game. That was a shocking part of the story, but base Doshiguma I think is a more fun hunt. Guardian Rathalos. Wow, what a glow up. Guardian Rathalos was such a fun hunt. I've hunted so many Rathalos in World and Rise, but this hunt was very refreshing and a really fun time. And even more so in Wilds, because our last wyvern that we hunted in the story was Ray Dow. That just feels really awesome to take down a big dragon-like monster again. The attack where Guardian Rathalos flies straight up in the air and lands on the ground right on top of you and then explodes is really cool, by the way. I really love that attack. The camera zooms out when that happens, and you start to wonder where the heck that thing went, and then it lands right on top of your face. And it's kind of jaw-dropping the first few times that it smacks you. I really like that a lot. Guardian Rathalos armor set is also really sick. It looks just like the old gear did, but with some nice glowy bits on it. Plus, the armor set bonus is pretty good too. Overall, I love Guardian Rathalos. I hunted a lot of it just because it was a fun hunt, and I hope to get some more time hunting it in Wilds. Jin-Dahad. I'm kind of torn with Jin-Dahad. On the one side, I love how big this monster is. As I've said already a few times in the video, big monsters, that's what Monster Hunter is all about. And there's also mechanics in the Jin-Dahad hunt that make it very engaging and feel more like a boss battle than a hunt. On the other hand, this monster is so lifeless. It doesn't feel like a monster. It just feels like a big ice machine that happens to look like a wingless dragon. I do like the hunt. Like I said, big monsters are really fun, and this guy's huge. The pinning from the ice attacks and the area of effect attacks are really great mechanics for group hunts too, so it's really engaging there. It works really well. The big Nova attack obviously is a big cinematic part of the hunt, and right now it's really fun to deal with that, but I think over time I think players are going to get tired of it as it's a big time waster to just sit there and wait for that attack. But for right now, it's great. I also think it's great that players get to experience hunt like this with the big old cinematic Novas in low rank instead of waiting till late game for it. It makes me wonder what Capcom has cooking for monsters later on in Wild's life cycle because they've introduced Nova so early in the game. But where's the character of Jin-Dahad? What's the story? He's just a big lizard robot. And I didn't find out for a long time that this guy even had eyes. This monster will be most remembered because of the Nova in the hunt, but not because he's a big menacing monster or some other story-driven reason. And I think that's too bad. I feel like it's a really lifeless monster. Guardian Ebony Odogaron. I'm so glad Odogaron made it back into Wilds. This is the best iteration of Odogaron yet. Ebony Odogaron was sweet before back in World, but adding explosions to his attacks is just awesome. I've always been a fan of Odogaron in World. He's well done in Wilds, and the hunt with him is a lot of fun. There's something really cool about how quick he is. That's something that you experience when you hunt Odogrons, is that they're kind of all over the place. They jump over you, they get behind you real fast, they got really quick attacks, and you kind of have to let them fire everything before you get a chance to counterattack. And Guardian Ebony Odogaron just does that even better because now he has explosions too. It's kind of sweet. The armor for Ebony Odogaron was very popular in World, and Wilds hasn't changed that one bit. The inclusion of a buff to the burst skill is also super great on the set, so it's worth checking out. Seeing Guardian Ebony Odogaron made me hopeful for base Odogaron later on in the game, but sadly we only have Ebony. I'm still happy about this because more doggos is always good, you know? Zoo-Woo. 2 octopus monsters? I'm in. I like New Udra more than Zoo-Woo, but Zoo-Woo's still pretty great. He feels very much like an assassin with his drippy poison-tipped arms, and that's kind of cool. At first, I didn't think you could sever his arms either, but I found out later that you could, so big props to Monster Hunter for more things to cut off. I really like how Zoo-Woo feeds off Guardian monsters in the story. I think that's a really cool bit of lore. It was very believable to have this guy skulking around and dragging corpses away. I loved it. It was really good. The hunt with Zoo-Woo is really cool, too. He has some attacks that are brutal, and the jumping octopus caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for that thing to fly up in the air. He hurts a lot, so you got to be ready on your toes there. The armor for Zoo-Woo is okay. It's not my favorite, not my cup of tea, but maybe I can figure something out with a few pieces. The assassin look is all right, but it's just not quite there for me. I hope Monster Hunter does more with octopus monsters in the future. I think they're a really great addition to the lineup, especially since you don't need them to be in water like you would imagine they would. It opens up a lot of design space for them down the road to add more octopus into the game. Guardian Arkfeld. I'm going to put Guardian Arkfeld and regular Arkfeld into this same category because to me, they're the same monster. And I'm going to be a little controversial on this one. So let me start by saying that overall, Arkfeld is a great monster. But I don't think Arkfeld did the extinct monster lore justice. We were all hyped during the spoiler season of Monster Hunter Wilds before the game came out about this new classification of monster and extinct monsters coming back and all that stuff. And I just don't think it's there. I don't think they really touched on it that much. It didn't make that much of a difference to me that it was an extinct monster. It didn't matter to the story that much. I think the chains for Arkfeld look pretty great and they work well, but it does not work well with the wings of Arkfeld at all. He looks like a mess when he's flying around. Maybe Arkfeld should have just been a monster that runs around really fast because the flight just looks so goofy. The hunt with Arkfeld, though, is awesome, and he utilizes the chains really well there. Getting smacked with big bone chains is very brutal. It hurts a lot. From what I understand, I haven't seen it yet, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but can you break the Arkfeld horns? Can you bust him off his face? I haven't seen that happen yet, and I'm pretty good about keeping on the face of the monster, so let me know if you could break the horns off. If you can't, I'll share my opinion here. Why? Why can't we break the horns off of Arkfeld? Can we break the horns off of any monster in Wilds? I can't remember. The only other monster that has horns is Gormagala, I think, and I don't know if you can bust those off either. So let me know in the comments, but I'm kind of, if that's not the case, I'm kind of disappointed about that. I think Arkfeld is a kind of mid-flagship monster overall. I like Nergigante so much more. Magnamalo was also really great. I just don't think Arkfeld was difficult enough in any part of the story, low or high rank. His tempered version is pretty good, but to me, that might need to be Arkfeld's actual difficulty in the story. He's just too weak. He just doesn't feel impactful enough unless you get obliterated by his Dragon Explosion attack. That's like the one attack that hits hard. Everything else is pretty weak. The Arkfeld armor, though, is absolutely pure gold. That might be my favorite looking armor set in the entire game, and it's definitely my favorite Palico armor in the game. It's awesome. Design-wise, Arkfeld looks all right. He's not top tier, but he's above mid tier in my opinion. I think that he's more beastly than dragon, which for a game that's trying to get away from Elder Dragons works really well. And it's very unique too. I think that's a really well done thing. I hope we learn more about Arkfeld as a species as a whole, and maybe when we do, it'll help me like Arkfeld more. Zoshia. The Zoshia hunt is how Monster Hunter hunts should be for every hunt. Holy crap. It's straight cinema hunting this thing. I really like every part of the Zoshia hunt. And honestly, the only thing missing is another hunt with it. Why did we only get to hunt this monster once? That's crazy. In Monster Hunter, you always get to hunt every monster more than once. Is this the first time this has happened? Is Zoshia the only monster I know of where you get to fight it one time and that's it? It's just weird to me that Monster Hunter did this 2 times with 2 really awesome things in Wilds. The Zoshia hunt is available 1 time in the story, and the character creator is only available to you 1 time at the very beginning of the game. Like, the character creator is a gold mine of design, and it should be available for everybody all the time. But if you want to edit your character, you got to pay money. That's behind a paywall. That's crazy. And Zoshia, you can only hunt it 1 time. Why? Hopefully we don't get Zoshia paywall stuff in the shop where you can pay money to hunt Zoshia again. I think that'd be crazy. So I hope down the road we get another chance to hunt Zoshia. I want to spend a lot of time in that hunt and experience all the elements flashing on screen and busting the Wilk off the monster to expose a Fatalis-like monster. It's just really, really cool. And the other part I don't get here, why isn't there armor for Zoshia? Probably because you can't hunt it more than once, right? But I think that's crazy. Capcom, what happened to your final boss checklist? It's the payoff for finishing low rank is to carve up that final boss and make some sweet armor out of him. But you can't do that in this game. That's kind of weird. Now, I don't know what Capcom has planned for Zoshia, but I hope it makes an epic return with a more powerful version of the hunt and the most insane looking armor that maybe it breaks as you take hits and you get more powerful as you take hits. That sounds pretty cool. I don't know. We'll see. Yan Kutku. Wilds was my first time hunting a Yan Kutku, and I gotta say, I think he's really cool. I think Yan Kutku could have been in the main storyline right before Doshigama as an introductory monster that also puts you through the ringer. Yan Kutku kind of hurts. He's pretty great, though. He has some really fun attacks. The one thing that I really love about Yan Kutku is the fireballs that he fires out. Wilds does lighting so well, and regardless of where you're hunting Yan Kutku, those fireballs look incredible. As a first hunt in high rank, I got pretty beat up by Yan Kutku, and that was a breath of fresh air, honestly. The high rank grind started with a bang, and I was ready for some more difficult hunts, even against monsters that don't seem like they're very difficult. Yan Kutku was very well placed here. The armor set for Yan Kutku is a little bit dated, kind of like Nursilla. It doesn't quite fit Monster Hunter in my opinion, but it's not for me. But experiencing the flock of Yan Kutku in the quest that go around and just beat you up, that's awesome. I think that's really good Monster Hunter humor in the right direction. That was a really well placed with the cutscenes and with the hunt itself. Overall, Yan Kutku is a great bird monster. He's my favorite one so far. Rathalos. Guardian Rathalos was already a great glow up, but so is regular Rathalos here in Wild. There's some new attacks on Rathalos that feel really good and they work really well in this game. It was very refreshing once again to hunt a Wyvern, and it's a really well-placed monster within the storyline, right? We go from Raidao to Guardian Rathalos, then you have Zoshia, and then Rathalos in the high rank campaign. I think that's awesome. Hunting Rathalos feels like Monster Hunter in my book, and I'm not even from the old gen of Monster Hunter. There's just something about Rathalos that's done so well as a hunt. Rathalos is the king of the skies, so having to spend time in the air makes sense for this hunt, despite how annoying it can get to have monsters flying around all the time. Thankfully, we have flash pods that actually matter in Wilds, so hunting Rathalos isn't too bad for our short-range weapons. I actually think Rathalos spends a good amount of time on the ground in Wilds, though, so that's always a bonus. I don't think I've been poisoned by Rathalos yet, though. Have you guys noticed that? Can you let me know if he poisons you still? Because definitely in past games, he poisoned you with his claws. He would land on your face with those claws, and you'd get poisoned. But I don't think it's happened to me yet. So either I just haven't been hit by that, or it's not happening. I don't know what's going on there. I need to go back and add up all the monsters that fit this, but one thing I love about Rathalos is the size of the monster. A lot of the monsters in Wilds are small, and they just don't feel as epic. But Rathalos is big, and it feels really good to smack him with huge weapons. Overall, I'm really glad to have Rathalos back. Guardian Rathalos and Rathalos feel different enough from each other, so they're like 2 different hunts, even though they're the same monster in quotation marks. But hunting both of them is a blast, and I'm glad that they're here. Rathian. I won't go too long here, because Rathian is just a weaker Rathalos in a lot of ways. There's some great differences, so it's worth hunting. And I do like hunting Rathian a lot. It's another big monster that feels really good to smack around with big weapons. But there's not too much difference between Rathian and Rathalos, so I won't go too deep here. One thing I love about the Rathian hunt, though, is the Omega Fireball attack that Rathian throws at you. It lights up the whole area. Like I said, lighting in Wild's really good. This Fireball is also well done here as well. One thing you might not know about me, by the way, is that I'm colorblind. And I have a really hard time distinguishing between Rathian and Rathalos. The red and green are the two colors I can't distinguish. And so I get it messed up multiple times where I think I'm hunting a Rathian and it's actually Rathalos and vice versa. So it's kind of interesting there. The weapons that you make from Rathian are of note here. They're really, really good for your poison builds. If you like running poison, or if you're experimenting with the foray skill, Rathian weapons have critical status on them and poison duration up, which is really awesome for both those reasons. Rathian being back, always good. Love hunting it. Gypceros. Just a note here, I don't have any footage from stream of hunting Gypceros or Gravios because they never showed up when I played on stream. So here's some footage of me hunting them not on stream, so we have something to look at while we're talking about Gypceros and Gravios. Unfortunately, with Gypceros, I was spoiled on the gimmick with Gypceros near the end of the hunt. And I'm not going to spoil it here for everybody who hasn't experienced it yet, but the tolls of being a content creator on the internet during the release of a new game got me with Gypceros, and I'm really sad about that. I really wish I would have experienced that without spoilers. The hunt with Gypceros is overall fine, though. I think it's a great hunt. It's more fun than Zitsuyaku back in World. Although the flashbang on Gypceros, I still haven't figured out how to get around, so it'll get a lot easier once I figure that out. But the flashbang still smacks me right now. Also, does anyone know if you can cut the tail off this guy? He's got the longest tail that I've seen on a really tiny bird, and I want to cut it off, but I haven't gotten one yet. So is that something that can happen? Let me know in the comments, all right? And the armor here at Gypceros is a little bit dated, too. This is another one that I don't think survived old Monster Hunter into new Monster. It's just not quite for me. I don't know. Maybe I just needed to be a part of that generation to like it more. I don't know. Gypceros is just a derpy little bird, and I kind of like it that way. This is another place where Monster Hunter humor works in Wilds. Gypceros waddles around and he fires poison everywhere in just the right amount of whimsy with a mix of realism, and I think that's really good. Gravios. I really like Basarios in Rise, and Gravios did not disappoint in Wilds. And I'll mention that I was using the Charge Blade when I hunted Gravios, so that made life a little bit easier. My attacks don't bounce when my sword is charged. So I can see where Gravios could be a big pain when you don't have easier hitting attacks, but Charge Blade made it kind of easy going because you don't bounce attacks off of it. Whenever I'm hunting Gravios, I'm always saying that he's using Hyper Beam. Gravios feels like he belongs in a Pokemon game, and all of his attacks go on cooldown every other attack. That'd be pretty great in Pokemon, honestly. I think Gravios' armor set bonus is pretty interesting as well. I'd really like to get some setups with it. You take 10% less damage when you're at full health with Gravios' armor set, and he also has peak performance on his build, which is kind of cool. So I'd love to combo that with Mushroomancer, since you use Mandragoras for healing all the time. You're at full health often, unless you take hits often, which Gravios helps you take less damage from hits. Could be kind of fun, I don't know. But overall, I think Gravios looks great, and his attacks in Wilds are awesome. The Hyper Beams look really, really good with the lighting in the game, and I'd really like hunting him a lot. I also need to see if I can cut off the tail of this guy, but we'll figure that out soon. Guardian Fulgur Anjanath. Oh, our boy! Anjanath is back! What? Oh, man, welcome back, Angie! Oh, my gosh, I'm so pumped! I had no idea! This is how Anjanath should have always been. Holy crap. Fulgur Anjanath looks so good in Wilds. The lightning explosions in this hunt are a work of art. I gotta get some screenshots of Fulgur Anjanath doing lightning everywhere because it is just awesome. It's so good. And in Wilds, there's no weird phases with Fulgur Anjanath anymore. He's just supersonic all the time. And so if you're not watching, he's gonna catch you off guard and charge at you and just cart you. He hits like a truck if you're not ready for it. This is by far my favorite version of Anjanath, and Anjanath was, for the longest time, my favorite monster in World. They did Anjanath really good justice in Wilds with how they made him look. He's huge. He hurts a lot. He was a surprise to me, too. I didn't even know he was in the game until I was on stream, and he showed up, and I was freaking out. I just love that he's here, and he's done really well. He's a really good Blanganga. Holy crap, another monkey monster. Have I mentioned I'm terrified of monkeys? Blanganga is definitely the most scary in Wilds of all the monkey monsters. I think the hunt with Blanganga is well done, and he definitely hurts, and his moves are very monkey-like, which fits his character very well. The little monkeys that he fights with, though, oh my gosh, they're so annoying. And that's the point, I know that, but I have found myself resorting to taking out the little monkeys first before I deal with Blanganga, because those little guys randomly knock me over or freeze me to the floor at the worst time. I'm very interested to make builds with the Blanganga gear. There's an interesting mechanic on the set bonus that makes you able to buff your hunting party when you do an emote in the game, and I think that's hilarious. One note here, though, is that I think Blanganga would be way more epic, especially at this point in the game when you get to hunt him for the first time, if he was almost 2 times bigger than he was. He packs a big punch, but he's so small. Where's my big monsters, Capcom? I just want Blanganga to be huge and then hit you with that punch. Give me King Kong to fight. That would be awesome. Blanganga is a fine monster, and I'm not looking to hunt anymore because monkeys terrify me. But overall, the design of the monster is great. The hunt's really good. He's a good monster. And last but certainly not least, Gore Magala. This is how Monster Hunter ought to be all the time. Gore Magala was a great way to end the high rank storyline. And yes, I know you'll hunt Arkfeld after this, but we already went over Arkfeld. Gore Magala is it. That is the hunt that I want to do all the time. I can't help with all the hunts with Gore Magala, or at least a majority of them, to feel like this is how I wanted Monster Hunter feel when I'm hunting Gore. Gore is out to kill you, literally. He would jump through the screen and grab you by the throat if he could. Gore Magala felt that way almost every time I was hunting it. He's vicious and he's really fun to take down. When you get an opportunity to knock down Gore Magala or paralyze it or slow it down in general, it feels really impactful to fire damage back at it. It's just awesome. You feel like you've climbed the summit in Monster Hunter when it finally goes down. It's awesome. It's such a good feeling. I love Monster Hunter because I love the feeling of conquering a struggle. It's a feeling that isn't found in a lot of video games, and I love it. Gore was like the only monster in Wilds that made me feel that way. And I hope that we'll get some more monsters like that in future title updates or expansions of the game. And at least we had one hunt in the game that gave me that feeling. The Gore Magala armor set is incredible, by the way. There's going to be a ton of amazing fashion hunters using this set. It's really good looking. I'm also really interested in trying the set bonus out with the Frenzy Virus plus Coalescence combo that's on the set. I've never really done anything with Frenzy. I don't know what the lore implications of Frenzy are outside of Wilds. I just know that Gore's been in past games. But the Frenzy Virus seems like fun. Maybe it's not supposed to be fun, but to me it sounds like fun. I want to try it out. I still fear Gore Magala when I'm choosing quests in the end game. I've got great gear, but when a regular or tempered one shows up on the map, I start to wonder if I've got everything together to try and take it down. It's a potent threat, and I really like that feeling a lot. And overall, here are my thoughts after completing the entire campaign. I still stand by what it said in my review, that low rank was pretty easy. And overall, I think the game is easy, but I do think that there is a difficulty spike in high rank, especially tempered monsters. Tempered monsters are gonna beat you up, and that's a good thing. They should beat you up. I do think it's a little bit late. I wish it was more of a difficulty spike that came in through the story, but it's fine. I don't mind. It doesn't make me not like the game at all. Outside of that, though, the storyline, fantastic. I love the story a lot in this game, and the graphics and everything are beautiful. I've got a pretty beefy PC, so I haven't had any hiccups with the game itself. It's been awesome. And that's the whole roster as of now. We have title updates coming soon with a new Monster to Wilds coming, as well as whatever else Capcom's going to cook up for us. Let me know what your thoughts were in the comments, though, about my thoughts of the Monsters in Wilds. Did you agree with mine, or were yours different? Let me know. Either way, happy hunting, and thanks for watching.